Welcome back, everyone, to GrayVee on the City, episode 2.
The GrayVee on the City this week is Duxbury cider. It's a dry cider from Meaford, Ontario,
And Hazed and Confused by Muskoka Brewery in Bracebridge, Ontario.
they're a pretty cool brewery. I like a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, a lot of unique beers.
Yeah, pretty tasty. I think Mad Tom is one of our go-tos.
Yeah,
one of our favorites
for sure. One of the few beers with a sequel.
Yeah, that's true. Which is what's it called?
Twice as Mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mad Tom and Twice as Mad.
Has how much a higher percentage?
Yeah, just like 1%.
That's why he's extra mad.
Bit of extra kick in there.
He's going crazy. That extra kick, just driving him nuts. I'll tell you who's going crazy. This COVID isolation. I was like, when it first got announced, I was like, this is amazing. I love it. It's going to be great. I love relaxing. I like not commuting because the buses suck around here. And I was just like, this is the best thing ever. I don't have to see people, and I don't have to make up lame excuses for when I don't want to see people. But it's driving me a little bit crazy. I'm pretty cranky today. I have to admit. Have you noticed?
No, of course not.
No, you would never notice such a thing. The passive aggressive looks while you test the microphone levels. Are you okay, babe? Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm fine. Just leave me alone. I've been alone all day. I need to be left alone more. But yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I think other people are struggling. The struggle is real.
Oh, for sure.
And I kept thinking though, I would not be good in prison. And that's a good thing to know.
Oh, since isolation, realized.
I realized. Yeah. Because before I thought I would be like totally.
Yeah, you could manage at least. Yeah.
I would be the manager of the prison. Administrative officer of the prison. But yeah, now I know for sure.
Yeah, would not work out well.
Yeah, no, because it's like tinier in prison. That's what they do. You
realize how much you value going outside, like, and just even for a short walk, just means the world, right?
That's when you don't bring our cat on a short walk.
Yeah.
Because if you bring our cat on a short walk, it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah. Recently got a harness for our cat, Ray.
Just terrible.
Yeah.
What a terrible idea. Because now she wants to go outside all the time.
Yeah. For the sole purpose of laying down outside.
But she heard like a car today. She heard 2 cars. And she like freaked out. It was like an airplane. It was like she was hearing an airplane for the first time. Just like totally freaked out. So I kind of chuckled evilly to myself. Payback.
Yeah.
Payback for all the whining. Anyways, but good cat all around. But yeah, I think that's one of those things that probably a lot of people are experiencing, is just like a little bit of a spiral. COVID cranky.
Yeah. You always want to do like your regular stuff. Like for us, we're always like doing music or working out. You're working from home at least.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's true.
When you're doing things you love every day,
still feels different.
When you're being forced to do those things instead of like, it's not as natural feeling in a way. It's like, okay, I can't do anything, so I'm going to do this.
Well, I think that's the thing. Yeah, it's people don't know how to react. People don't know what the new normal is. Like we have to adjust or whatever. And it's true. I mean, from a society perspective, for us in Canada and United States and stuff like that, we don't have these types of crazy crises. And lots of places in the world don't have a recent event that was this like, crazy. I mean, I know that a lot of countries in Africa were affected by Ebola and stuff like that. But like
that's still fairly localized.
It was very localized. Yeah, you're right. But so I think that we just don't understand how to behave. This is a weird situation for us,
It's a reminder, like you said, the Ebola thing. We have this thing in our mind like, oh, it's over there. It's not going to bother us. It's over there. But then something like this pops up. It's like, oh yeah, things can still happen to us.
Yeah, we're not invincible. No matter what Trump says, we cannot avoid certain things. No, but it's true. I mean, like, we all breathe the same air. So, but.
Yeah.
Good point, Vanessa. Yeah. But yeah, I think that there's something to be said about the adjustment period. And maybe some of us will never adjust completely, which is a good thing, I guess. I don't know. I'm terrified of like when things get back to normal that I'll just suffer intense anxiety attacks when presented with normal activities. like boarding a bus. I don't know. It's
being
already
forced to take the 12 again.
Exactly. It's already pretty anxiety ridden as is. So now that I've been isolated from it, how is that going to happen? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it is going to be a weird feeling going back to normal life.
Yeah, I think so. That's okay. It'll come. I'm sure it'll come slowly.
We have a month or two to prepare for it, so.
Yeah, it'll creep up slowly, and there'll be a whole bunch of slow changes, I think. Yeah. They can't just be like, blah, everyone back to normal. Here we go.
Yeah, I guess we'll probably open up certain businesses first and that sort of thing.
I think so, yeah.
We'd imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
Good thing we're not in charge because we don't have a plan.
Not our time to figure it out. Good luck, folks.
We do not have a plan at all. How would you do that? I don't know. Just maybe open the bars.
But whatever do, we'll complain about it. That's for sure.
That's true. I know it's the complaints that are so interesting too. And you know what? I was reading this article about basically like people's behaviors and stuff like that. And particularly it was written obviously when kind of the crisis first hit and like lockdown was first happening and people were like hoarding items and stuff like that. Yeah. And you know, we can connect it to basically we haven't recently experienced this. So we don't know what the norms are, what, you know, how we should behave, how we should be. Yeah. And I think our default is we kind of just navigate towards, self-protection, which is something that, you know, through so many ways, our society has been, you know, kind of saying you're an individual, you're special, blah, 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 protect yourself. Yeah. And in so many ways, we've actually been isolating ourselves from this collectiveness, right? And we've been kind of, community, it exists, but not in the same way it did in the 50s, right? And stuff like that. So the nature of community has changed. And I think that it's really interesting because there's a lot of measures right now to bring back kind of this collective conscience and this movement to collectively do something to benefit society as a whole, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that, you know, it's a natural reaction for these people to be so focused on them and their families and stuff because it's something that we've been taught. Yeah. And, you know, it's something that is not as common for us to think outside of that individual bubble.
Yeah. True. It sort of goes like, even biologically speaking, like we evolved in smaller tribes, right? So you're used to taking over or looking after your own small tribe, you know, so when every single small tribe in the city starts doing that, obviously toilet paper runs out, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, we're just like really small tribes. Yeah. And it's weird. And I think Emil Durkheim, he had theorized this back in I think it was the 1860s, which was this concept of anomie, which is basically if we don't understand how we're supposed to behave socially, and we don't have these norms established, then there is going to be this fear, this desperation, and things like that. That type of social activity is going to take place because we don't know how to socially react to each other and everything like that. So I think that it's interesting. I mean, those theories, obviously, they have a hold even now in terms of how people react and interact with each other when we don't know and when we're not getting like clear direction from you know, politicians and our government and stuff. And I think a lot of people were really confused about the messaging when it first happened.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I feel like they should have maybe like met in like, I don't know, the IKEA parking lot and been like, guys, put your mask on. This is what we're going to say. Instead of just like kind of these piecemeal things, you know? Yeah. So it's interesting. I actually, I was looking at this article today. Doug Ford, it's Doug, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got him and Rob confused all the time. He went to pick up like a whole bunch of boxes of masks from like a dentist who was basically, I guess, texted him and was like, hey, I have masks, which I think was really funny because given like the Ford brothers history and stuff like that, I think it's the first time a Ford brother met in like the alley to pick up something that would benefit greater society. Oh boy, good times.
That's great.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we should put that aside, and I really do want to refrain as the weeks go on from talking too much about COVID because I think
it's hard not to dwell on, but it's important to.
It's important, but
to not
I think that there's
consumed by it.
Exactly. I think there's a place where we can kind of say, let's be COVID free. Let's not talk about this all the time. But we'll acknowledge it just because I was cranky today.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen very often at all. Oh, it's just change. It's the lack of control, right?
Yeah.
Free will.
I was just going to say, with all this free time, you have a lot of time to just think of random stuff, right?
Yeah. Which you're great at.
So I just think, like, do you believe in free will?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think one of my main beefs with Foucault, who's like big sociology, criminology theorist, is that sometimes he negates the fact that there's agency, that there's free will for people. So, we talk about all these government mechanisms of controlling people and stuff like that. But really, we do as individuals, even if we're handed rules, and strict and stringent rules, we still have this way that we defy them.
Right.
And I think that that's great. Are you going to ruin that for me?
I'm very undecided on free will.
Okay.
Like, well, the thing about that is those rules that you talk about, those are outside influences, whereas
right.
If there wasn't free will, it comes from within, like it's your own robotic biological self.
So you're talking about like biological free will?
Yeah. Well, free will in general. If free will doesn't exist, then it's because of biology and biochemistry and whatnot.
So you're saying that maybe we don't have as much free will because of what we're made out of?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Basically, it's just neurons firing and chemical reactions. When you feel happy, it's because certain chemicals are being released in your body and that tell your brain that you're happy, right?
Mm-hmm. But you can control those. You have free will to decide whether or not to take chemicals to increase or decrease, right?
True.
And I mean, if
but it's your decision to do that. Your decision. That's the question.
Well, whose decision would it be?
Whatever's going on in your head, your biology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's this weird thing. Like every time I ask myself this, my first reaction is, yeah, of course I have free will. But then as I think about it more and more, I sort of lean towards not having free will.
Is that why sometimes when we're talking, you just kind of like stare into like space? Because
yeah, it's not my fault. It's
because you're thinking about these things while I'm asking you what you want for dinner. Is that what's going on?
I heard of an experiment. There's a show back in the day called Through the Wormhole. Morgan Freeman narrated it. And,
he narrates everything. He's like, oh, a science
best
topic.
narrator of all time.
I guess so. I don't know. I don't know. There's been some weird rumors floating around about that guy. I don't know how
I've heard
I feel
some
about
stuff
him.
since too, but
since the whole Crosby incident.
All that aside.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, the show was just each episode would just ask a question. One was like, "Is your life after death? What is time?
What is Jello pudding?
Yeah. What is free will? Is there free will? I should say." And one of the experiments that they talked about, I don't remember what the experiment, or even if they described it, what the experiment was, but basically they'd have certain participants and they told them you do have free will, and other participants, they told them you don't have free will. And the participants that were told they don't have free will were more likely to act in an amoral fashion.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But it doesn't really prove the idea either way, but it's still a weird thing.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like there must have been a lot of...
It's a weird excuse to do something that's not right.
But that's strange.
Most people wouldn't make that conscious decision en masse.
So basically they said to these people, you have free will. And they said to the other group that you don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then they had some sort of test. I don't remember what it was. Okay. This was years ago. I don't remember specifics. But.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But there's all sorts of experiments of that nature, right? Mm-hmm. Where you segregate people, like the Stanley Milgram, experiments and things like that. Prison experiments.
Oh yes, that one. Yeah. Do you want to describe that for people listening if they haven't heard it?
Yeah, which was basically the whole purpose of the prison experiment. Stanford, Milgram's different. Stanford
Okay.
prison experiment was basically to segregate people. So there's the guards of this fake prison, and then there's the prisoners in the fake prison. And so they reenact this prison type scenario, and it's a very long experiment. So it's going on for days and days and days. And there's conditions, you know, the prisoners are locked up and guards are free to do whatever. And sure enough, people kind of the guards took on the role of kind of cruelty and control and asserting that control. But I think that has to do more with sociology, like more of the social. Whereas you're talking more about biologically what people will do.
Well, it's sort of.
But I think
though.
that,
That's
I
the
don't
thing.
know. I think that I would need to know more about that study.
Yeah. The problem, well, I guess what the study found was like the people in power, as it got more power, they acted more amorally. Is that how it went? Like they started mistreating
which
the
is the same
prisoners.
thing. Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like-
Well, that's the Stanford. But
Yeah.
what you're referring to,
Yeah.
you're saying it's different. It's not measuring the social. It's measuring something else.
Well, I guess the socials sort
It's
of
always gonna
determined by the
intersect.
biology. Yeah.
So how do you take that as a
Exactly.
variable out
I
of
feel like it's weird 'cause I feel like no experiment can determine free will in itself. I think the question you need to answer is what is consciousness? Because consciousness, whether, I feel like if you figure out consciousness is just a byproduct of brain activity, then you don't have free will. But if it's some sort of outside influence of some sort, then you're more likely to have free will. Do you know what I mean?
So if you are, okay, I get what you're saying, I think. I don't know. Well, it's interesting because we watched that documentary about Aaron Hernandez and concussions
Yeah.
and how a concussion can and we know this from multiple studies on concussions. And who was the guy? Oh, there was like that famous case of the guy that got the pole stuck through like his eye and it went through his prefrontal cortex.
And he got anger issues and stuff.
And he had anger issues and everything. So we know that. So we know that biologically there's a huge component, right? But what you're saying is, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that believe there's only one consciousness that permeates everyone. You know.
I've heard that. Yeah.
To me, in a way, that sort of says that there is not free will, a lot of the time anyway. Because then that consciousness is just looking through the window of our biological window of our brain in a way.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of observing our actions. And that's why things like brain trauma can create these anger issues and stuff. Because why would a single consciousness want to mistreat itself in another body?
Yeah. So this idea of the collective consciousness, yeah. Which is something, I don't know. But see, you don't believe in like psychics or like people that can tap in. But what if psychics are just like tapping into that collective consciousness, right? They're tapping
if psychics exist, that's a good idea of what they're doing, but I haven't seen any convincing psychics.
But I feel like you wouldn't, I don't know. I feel like you
just have-
always say that. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen convincing proof yet.
I just have high standards of what I would.
But how would you
That
prove
would
that? I
convince
mean,
me.
we can't even assert right now what a collective, we can just
Like what number
hypothesize.
am I thinking? You go to a psychic, what number am I thinking?
Yeah.
That's all
Well,
you
a
need,
lot
right?
of it can be dependent on
Or-
probability and stuff like that.
I suppose.
So I do think that there's fakes for sure.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I think
for sure.
but I think that if we, I don't know. I think that if we want to believe in this collective consciousness and we want to believe and start experimenting with, you know, consciousness and free will and stuff like that, then you have to open yourself up to other unexplained things. Yeah. And just not negate them, you know? Yeah. But.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a really far-reaching argument. Like, you know,
It's out
for
there,
me,
sure.
it's out there. It's like, okay. So I'm like, all right, well, if that's, you know, the case, then we could open the door to, I don't know, researching other oddball things.
Yeah.
It's all those scientists do. They're just doing the oddball science now. Oh, boy. But I think there's something to be said for a shared consciousness. But so why do we suck so much at like uniting then? and
Yeah, it is a
you
weird
know,
thing.
like it's really strange. So is it just?
I guess like
would that just be like our social?
well, I
don't
think
know.
some people would argue that the issue is where the one consciousness, like you think a thought in your brain, let's say the rabbit jumps over the hole, and you think it inside your head. You don't say it, you just think it. But
I've never thought that.
But let's say you did.
Okay.
Well, you've never seen a rabbit jump over a hole before?
I haven't thought it that specifically with those specific words.
But you could just think in your head and you can watch yourself think it. Right? Like you can observe yourself thinking, right?
Yeah.
So people take that idea and say that's, in a way, proof that there's your consciousness and then your biological ego.
Right.
Right? So I guess where society or the world has gone wrong is that the ego has taken over in too many people and it's controlling. I guess the biological ego is controlling society. And that's where selfishness comes in. Whereas, so if enough people block that out, then you'd be more caring to the people around you.
Interesting. Which is kind of like what the principles of, I think, meditation and stuff like that will do, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, there's so many different kinds of meditation. I'm not an expert on it. Like, the ones I used to do was just, like, quieting the mind and not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
Some people just concentrate on their breath and nothing but their breath for...
Right. But I think that it could be a way of tapping into greater. I don't know. That stuff is interesting, but it makes my head hurt a little bit.
You want your head to hurt a little more.
But yeah, I think that there's all sorts of unknowns in interesting ways. Like I always struggled with that too. I think in any social studies or whatever, always struggle with that. You know, what's environmental, what's biological, what's, you know, this, that, and the other. But what would that do to the social sciences if we found out that truth?
That there is no free will, or there is?
Yeah, that there is no free will. Oh my!
That would be weird, wouldn't it?
We're talking about a huge impact to all sorts of ways of information.
That'd be a good research paper.
Information finding and stuff like that.
But the thing too, with like that experiment through the wormhole, if everyone on planet Earth found out there was no free will, then a lot of people would start acting more amorally as a result. If that experiment proves true on a grand scale.
It would be chaos, utter chaos.
Eventually.
Let's do it now, right in the middle of a COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Let's send the message out. Where's Justin Trudeau? Get on your speakerphone. Let's test this out. I don't know. It's pretty far-fetched. Pretty far-fetched, but interesting all the same.
Yeah. I apart from free will, I'm always a fan of quantum physics, right? You know that. And I heard this idea called the many worlds theory. And long story short, scientists a little while back found out that particles aren't just little marbles flying around space. They're actually waves of potential.
Okay. So
you can measure a particle, and before you measure it, it can go this way and that way simultaneously. It doesn't actually choose a way. It's living both worlds simultaneously. But once you measure it, it chooses a path.
Okay.
So what this theory says is that instead of the electron choosing a path, it does go to both paths. But the universe splits and both exist simultaneously, but on different timelines.
What?
Yeah.
What the heck is that? What are you talking about? You lost me at marble. The instant you said marble with your hand gestures, I was just picturing like little marbles.
All right, picture marbles rolling down a ramp.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Whee!
At the bottom there's a fork.
That's fun.
There's a fork in the road.
Okay.
So the marble
is it a metaphorical fork or is it a real fork?
It's a real fork.
Oh, okay.
So the marble could go left or it could go right.
Right.
But you won't know unless you have a camera there to decide.
Why do I have a camera when I'm in the forest? When I'm
Forest, where'd the forest come from?
I'm taking nature photos of the forest, filming marbles going
Wild
down
marbles.
ramps. Okay, all right. So I'm in the forest with my camera,
Sure.
and there's particle marbles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Flying down a ramp.
Are they particles or are they electrons?
Well, electron is a particle.
Oh,
so,
okay,
yeah,
cool.
Type of particle.
Cool. Yeah. So they go down this ramp.
Yeah.
Whee! And I've got the fork in the road.
There's a fork in the road.
There's fork. I don't have the fork. The fork is
The fork
in
is
the
there.
road. Okay. And I got my camera.
Yeah. So the camera turns off. You can't tell which way the marble rolls. This analogy is making it even harder for me to explain somehow.
It's like you're trying to break down a very complex topic to a kindergartner level.
Yeah.
Because you know that's what you need.
That's actually a problem I have with like reading books on these things, because I get that you have to dumb it down for people, but sometimes I feel the author dumbs it down too much and it sort of obscures what they're actually trying to say.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I find you gotta read a couple books to sort of conglomerate what they're trying to say.
Because they're just like, most of the population is stupid.
Yeah.
So, so we should just treat them like they're 5 years old when we're explaining this. And that's why we use words like marbles. But what, the explanation aside, what was the conclusion? Because I think we can
it's up in the
all
air.
understand the conclusion.
This is just an idea that they have. But like really high level physicists believe this could be the case.
The case of what? What is the case?
That when a particle can go left or right, let's say. Yeah. It does go both, in fact.
Okay, so a particle splits itself.
No, the universe splits itself.
Oh, okay.
So in one universe, the particle goes left. The other universe, the particle goes right.
Oh, my lord. Okay.
Parallel worlds. So that's why they call it the many worlds theory.
Did you ever see that Star Trek episode? I feel like Star Trek just explains these like so much better, babe. The Star Trek episode where, and this is like first generation with like William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, and they have this idea of multiple worlds, and there's like an evil Captain Kirk, and then there's like an evil Spock, and then there's a nice Spock and a nice Captain Kirk. Okay. And that's it. Yeah. That's what you're saying. Star Trek already told me about it. Don't worry.
Well, it's sort of different. That's like multiverse.
But that was my one way of understanding, and you've just taken it.
Well, that's a way of explaining a different theory, though. Like the multiverse, whereas like our universe is not the only one, but there's an infinite amount of them. And if there's an infinite amount of universes, that means that there's most likely copies of us infinite amount of times.
Is that,
and they're living the exact same lives as us.
And that's why you have freaky dreams, right?
Yeah, maybe.
I honestly think I have so many freaky dreams. I like weird reoccurring dream where I go in the same like cool house.
Oh, so you're saying you're experiencing other
I'm saying I tapped into their
maybe that's universe. The one consciousness that you're
I'm experiencing that. Oh man, do they have bad lives? Not as good as me. For sure. A lot of crappy experiences. Or my subconscious is just, I don't know. But let me tell you, there are some wacky places.
I bet.
The other V's go. Oh boy. I used to have, did I ever tell you about my washroom nightmares? We have to bring this back from the intelligent place I went to back to like toilet conversation, which is what I'm more comfortable
with. An infinite number of toilets and infinite number of universes.
I used to have like nightmares about like dirty washrooms for the longest time, like just really dirty washrooms. Yeah. And I would wake up and just like I would be so happy that I had a clean washroom. Do you ever have anything weird like that?
Recurring dreams?
Didn't you have like a weird dream where you were like in a cult or something and then you just realized that was home life?
I don't remember that one. I was in a cult? I don't remember that.
Yeah, in your dream. I thought you had a weird dream but you were in a cult.
No, I don't remember that one. Maybe.
Woke up and you realized that I was your leader.
Is this your wishful thinking? That you're my leader?
Yeah, I feel like you did, or you had a dream about like the end of the world or something.
I've had a couple of dreams about the end of the
I
world.
feel like
yeah.
you have very, very intelligent dreams,
I
whereas
have
me,
weird
I'm just like,
apocalyptic dreams sometimes.
But you have what?
I've just weird apocalyptic dreams. Like
Yeah.
I've had 2 different dreams where
Probably
I get
from all
killed
those
by
books
nuclear
you read
bombs.
about consciousness and
Maybe.
stuff. Your brain's like, I don't know how to deal
Here's a
with
question.
this.
If there's an infinite number of universes out there with infinite copies of you, and they live every life you potentially could live, you make every decision that you could make.
There's infinite amount of COVID, is what you're saying.
But then there's infinite amount of universes where COVID doesn't exist. So there's a bright side.
How do you think that?
Because anything that can happen does happen in an infinite amount of universes, mathematically.
Anything what? Can you say that again?
Anything that can happen does happen. So like this conversation has happened an infinite amount of times in other universes.
Why?
To like that exact snap. Except in another universe, maybe that snap was a second later.
But like mirror, it's like a mirror, is what you're saying.
Sort of, yeah. Well,
It sounds like you're saying that the universes are mirrored.
If this is the case, I feel like this is a case for not having free will.
Okay.
Because it's just mathematics and like chemical
probability.
reactions.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
probability over the course of your life, you're gonna
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think let's bring it back to the psychics, because this probably doesn't relate to what you were saying at all, but somehow my brain has connected it.
Yeah.
But I was looking into it, and they've had like these fake like religious leaders and everything that like say, oh yeah, they predict like collapses and like the end of the world and like volcanoes, and some even said they predicted 9/11 and stuff like that. But I was reading it, and basically scientists were saying the probability of these events happening, regardless of like just the probability of these events happening within a lifetime, is so likely that people can use these kind of generalized statements and seem like they're
Right.
spiritual or like in the know or whatever.
Right.
But the probability is actually so likely that will happen that
Eventually,
yeah, not the end of the world scenario,
Yeah.
but like
but some sort of cataclysm.
yeah, exactly, but something like a volcano or Hurricane Katrina or something like that. So I thought that was really interesting, because again, we're referring to probability and the likelihood that things will happen.
Yeah, I feel like it's just like crazy people just closing their eyes and throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah, eventually you're gonna hit on something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, still not convincing me of psychics though.
Yeah, no, if anything, I'm discrediting them now.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I don't know, I've done a full 180. But it is interesting. I don't know. I think that all of that stuff is just like, you think about the people that design these types of studies, like, man, like I can't even understand it in the dumbed down version you're doing. And I just like think like, who are these people? Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
And they're walking among us. These crazy people thinking about collective consciousness.
It's funny when you hear them on podcasts, because it's such like normal people just casually talking,
You think.
But then they get into these ideas. And
then inside they're robots. That's what they are. They're robots. Well, isn't there like that whole, I just took like a cognitive science course, and, basically the idea that humans are computers. Like we're just more advanced computers. So devastating to like a young 20-year-old to learn that. But yeah, I think, I don't know. It's crazy. It's craziness. It's too out there.
Yeah. Yeah. What's like that simulation theory?
What's the simulation theory?
Elon Musk is a fan of this theory, actually.
Oh, wasn't that? Right. I made that up too.
Wow, you're as smart as Elon Musk.
I invented the Tesla. It was mine first. He stole it. What was that? That was that we're living like in a
computer program,
world.
basically.
Yeah. I like that.
Which sort of, in a way, would explain quantum mechanics, because the way quantum mechanics works is that there's like billions, probably trillions of particles in the universe, potentially, but they don't actually exist as particles. They exist as probabilities of waves. so they're not in any particular point in time until someone measures them, and then they boop, the waveform collapses is the phrase into a single particle. And once the measurement is finished, then it goes back into being a wave. So it's a weird way to save computing power. Instead of keeping track of all these individual particles, you just keep track of the probability of everything being the way it is.
And this is like what Elon Musk is saying?
I'm not sure if that's his explanation, but he seems
Oh,
to
so you're saying that
the
idea that particles exist in waves
Mhm.
and not marbles.
not marbles in the jungle, yeah.
The reason why they exist in waves is to conserve energy. Is that what you're saying?
For the computer. It would conserve computing power.
Computing power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a computer can only do so many calculations in a second, let's say. I don't know anything about computers, but...
You know.
Yeah.
I'm just freestyling here. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I fully
like
understand.
I think of it as video games.
You know,
like,
when I say like that's interesting, that's
that's me.
just me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I play video games, so
Yeah.
I follow them, like developers that make them and stuff.
Oh, is that why you listen to that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not that I play
To
them much,
understand the
but I like to see where the
particles.
industry is going.
Okay.
But yeah, they're always trying to squeeze every ounce of power out of these consoles.
Right.
So in order to do that, they make these little tricks. So like where your character's looking, they will map that so you can see it, but behind the character, there's nothing, right?
Okay.
So wherever the camera is looking, they'll have the whole world, but behind the character, there's nothing. So it's sort of the way quantum mechanics works. When you're not looking at it, there's nothing there but waves. But when you look at a specific point, then it collapses into what you want to see.
So you're saying like right now there's nothing behind me until I look at it.
It's not about your
And that makes me a magician with my eyes.
It would be weird if that was the way it was, right?
Oh, it's not? Is that not what you're
No.
saying?
No.
Oh, that's just the video game world.
Well, with quantum mechanics, it's not what you look at with your eyes; it's what you measure with an instrument. Because you can't see electrons with your eyes; they're too tiny.
So I don't know. I'm not getting this. I'm not getting this at all. This might have to be like episode 2.5.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure we'll come back to it at some point.
We will have to take a shot of absinthe and see little green fairies in order for me to understand. Or maybe like, I don't know, if you drew pictures in crayons, maybe. Maybe I would get that.
Yeah, I need to get a giant whiteboard here and
just a beautiful mind it. Yeah. Just draw it out for me. Stick figures, those are very approachable for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Is that a wrap?
I think so.
I feel like my brain's been assaulted. Jeez, Louise. I'm going to have to come up with something.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot more intense for the next podcast. Well, thank you, everybody. If you weren't drinking, you sure are now. So we will sign off with a cheers. Thanks for listening to GrayVee in the City. On the City. We're on it. We're not in it. GrayVee on the City.
Or you're in it and on it simultaneously.
Oh, boy. Okay, goodbye.